Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from a Frontier. We'll be off tomorrow as I'll be driving down to the Tsavo West, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a moment. Home thoughts, let me start with Elon Musk's SpaceX is slated to launch a secret spycraft mission on Thursday. It's remarkable, isn't it, that he parlayed all of this into something quite extraordinary. You know, whenever I read his tweets or anything, I just marvel at his willpower. Tsavo calling, as I said, this is Litilal, the oldest elephant in Tsavo West at 62. He's still strong, full of character. That's Finch Hatton's. And Tsavo, once upon a time, had many of these incredible tuskers. There are fewer left. I think I read somewhere there are about 11 left in Kenya in total. And one of them, the Douglas Hamiltons, had a tracker on, and Mrs. Douglas Hamilton, who I met on a plane flight, was describing to me how suddenly, all of a sudden, this elephant takes off and heads straight towards Somalia. Actually, over a 12-day period, enters into Somalia, comes back. The interesting thing was, it only moved at night. It was so aware of the dangers. And in the daytime, it was totally silent and totally hidden. And then she also told me, interestingly, that you know, they have a lot of these trackers on elephants in and around the Samburu. And the moment they step into the park, just a foot, they relax, and you can get it in the sensor. Amazing. Tsavo West encompasses 3,000 square miles, overlooking recent lava flows and volcanic cones, as well as the crystal clear waters of Mazima Springs bubbling from the lava in the midst of an arid land. The Chulu range of hills were of recent volcanic origin, clothed in emergent forest. Therefore, notwithstanding the wildlife it harboured, about which little was known, other than it was known as the home range of many, mainly bull elephants, the magnificent scenery alone warranted its national park status. The first headquarters was established on the slopes of a low hill at Kamboyo, within easy reach of railhead at Mtito and Day, commanding breathtaking views of a spectacularly stunning landscape. And that is a review of a book by Daphne Sheldrick. And look at this photograph, the mighty Dabassa herd in the Tsavo. And from there I'm going to jump to, and just for a moment, I'd reached the point of ecstasy that I always wanted to reach, which was the complete step across chronological time into timeless shadows and wonderment and the bleakness of the mortal realm, and the sensation of death kicking at my heels to move on with a phantom dogging its own heels, and myself hurrying to a plank where all the angels dove off and flew into the holy void of uncreated emptiness, the potent and inconceivable radiances shining in bright mind essence. Innumerable lotus lands falling open in the magic moth swarm of heaven. I could hear an indescribable seething roar, which wasn't in my ear but everywhere, and had nothing to do with sounds. I realized that I had died and been reborn numberless times, but just didn't remember especially, because the transitions from life to death and back to life are so ghostly easy, a magical action for naught, like falling asleep and waking up again a million times, the utter casualness and deep ignorance of it. I realized it was only because of the stability of the intrinsic mind that these ripples of birth and death took place, like the action of the wind on a sheet of pure, serene, mirror-like water. I felt sweet, swinging bliss like a big shot of heroin in the mainline vein, like a gulp of wine late in the afternoon, and it makes you shudder. My feet tingled. I thought I was going to die the very next moment, but I didn't die. Jack Kerouac on the road. Powerful stuff. Why this footprint is challenging established theories of human evolution. This is a Trachilos footprint, indicates human ancestors were in Crete 6 million years ago. The period corresponds to a geological time interval known as the Miocene. The footprints are small tracks made by someone walking upright on two legs. There are 29 of them in total. They range in size from 95 to 223 millimeters and have a shape and form very similar to human tracks. Non-human ape footprints look very different. The foot is shaped more like a human hand with the big toe attached low on the side of the sole and sticking out sideways. The cradle of humanity has long been thought to lie in Africa, with most researchers suggesting that Ethiopia was where the human lineage originated. The earliest known body fossils that are accepted as hominins by most researchers are Sahelanthropus chadensis from Chad, about 7 million years old, Aurorin tugenensis from Kenya, about 6 million years old, and Ardipithecus cadaver from Ethiopia, about 5.8 to 5.2 million years old. The oldest known footprints, however, were found in Laetoli in Tanzania and came from the next geological time interval, the Pliocene. These are some 3.66 million years old and even more human-like than those of Trachilos. The second oldest tracks are those at Illiret, made by Homo erectus, 1.5 million years old, and are little different from the tracks that we ourselves make today. It's remarkable. And we all study just, the last 5,000 years of human history. Muhammad, Jesus, Buddha, all this is like the last 5, Hinduism, or around thereabouts. But, we never go back. It's just a blip, isn't it, when you think about it? The scheme of a history that's 6 million years. And actually, if you look at these footprints, they look so human. And when you actually study, they were all in groups, and it seemed to be a collaborative effort. So, very remarkable. Let's move on. Political reflections. Hurricane Irma. Take a look at this photograph. China's MOFO on Wednesday urged the US and the Republic of Korea to stop the THAAD deployment immediately in response to the Republic of Korea's reported plan to install additional launchers on Thursday. I remain of the view that China is playing a double-sided hand, and that it suits China for North Korea to be an attack dog, because after all, we've got this huge build-up of military presence, 35,000 American soldiers, and now THAAD launchers right there. So I think, any deal that ultimately sees China really crack the whip has to give something in return. What that is, that's not clear to me. Republicans are left reeling after deal between Trump and Democrats. The Pelosi-Schumer-Trump deal is bad, said Senator Ben Sasse in a short-term statement. McConnell told reporters it was the president's decision and that GOP leadership will move forward with it. The president could speak for himself, but his feeling was that we needed to come together to not create a picture of divisiveness at a time of genuine national crisis, and that was the rationale. Still, it was a stunning turn of events. Wednesday morning began with Pelosi and Schumer issuing their demand that the debt limit be increased for just 3 months. Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin, he of the wife who ran into trouble, was also present, argued in favor of a longer-term debt limit extension, but the president cut him off and sided with the Democrats. Multiple sources with knowledge of the meeting said. In an unexpected turn of events, Ivanka Trump, the president's daughter and advisor, came into the room to say hello toward the end of the meeting, which derailed the conversation and left the Republicans visibly annoyed. Democratic aide briefed on the meeting said, "We had a very good meeting with Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer," Trump said. "We agreed to a 3-month extension on the debt ceiling. which they consider to be sacred, very important, always will all agree on debt ceiling automatically because of the importance of it. Merry Christmas, said Senator John Booth, Republican. Conclusions, brilliantly wrong-foots his own party. And that's quite clever, I think, actually. Might indicate that he's able to navigate a middle ground. How the Assault on Obama's Legacy Explains Trump is a Newsweek article. In the 1880s, France saw the unlikely rise of Georges Boulanger, a military man who built a political movement based entirely on grievance. Boulangism, as that movement came to be called, began with a desire to exact revenge on Germany, which had recently defeated France in the Franco-Prussian War. Rife with romantic nationalist overtones, Boulangism centered on the power and charisma of a single leader who was seen as a kind of political savior for a nation led astray by foreign forces and ideology, as the political scientist Ingrid L. Anderson wrote. And saying, Republicans probably don't know it, but they appear to have elected a general revanche last November. 8 months into his presidency, it is clear that President Donald J. Trump is not a conservative Republican, nationalist strongman, or centrist deal-maker. He is instead a revanchist whose sole aim is to cancel every achievement of President Obama while punishing Hillary Clinton, the woman who was supposed to build on those achievements. The remarkable thing about Trump is that he doesn't even try to hide his revanchism in any significant degree. BuzzFeed report about European leaders' observations of Trump. They believe Trump's foreign policy is chiefly driven by an obsession with unraveling Barack Obama's policies. It's his only real position, one European diplomat said. He will ask, did Obama approve this? And if the answer is affirmative, he will say, we don't. He won't even want to listen to the arguments or have a debate. He is obsessed with Obama. American people are not as ignorant or mean-spirited as Trump seems to believe. DACA belongs to Obama, so it must be tossed out of the White House like trash left over by a previous tenant. Same with the Paris Climate Accord, another major achievement of the previous administration. Again, most Americans, 70%, wanted to keep things as they were. Again, revanchism won over reason. Good point. If you're sleeping, wake up. The nightmares are trying to get rid of the dreamers. Let us band together, turn the light on for those with no vision. That's Pharrell, the pop singer. I continue to be very worried that the world is counting down to war and atrocity, and it is hubris to suppose that it is hyperbole now, Umerage. What influence do BRICS nations have was a debate I participated on Al Jazeera's Inside Story, and I thank Jane Dutton for being such a great host, and the other guest was Sriram Chaulia from the Dean of the Jindal School of International Affairs, and Einar Tangen, an advisor to the Chinese government. And interestingly, I've just written a piece called China Rising, and then I read the Indian Army chief says we must prepare for simultaneous war with China and Pakistan. India's army chief said on Wednesday the country should be prepared for a potential two-front war, given China is flexing its muscles and there is little hope for reconciliation with Pakistan. General Bipin Rawat referred to a recent 10-week standoff with the Chinese army in the Himalayas that ended last week. He said the situation could gradually snowball into a larger conflict on India's northern border. Rawat said Pakistan on the Western Front would take advantage of such a situation. Xi Jinping says a dark shadow looms over the world after years of peace. The press trust of India news agency quoted Rawat's remarks at a seminar organized by the Center for Land Warfare Studies, a think tank in New Delhi. We have to be prepared in our context, therefore warfare lies within the realm of reality, he said. Excuse me, his comments come a day after India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi and China's President Xi Jinping agreed on a forward-looking approach to Sino-India ties. putting behind the Doklam standoff. So, I think Narendra Modi, by the way, capitulated on the plateau and now has put in a lady defense minister in order to negotiate on his behalf. In this photograph, Narendra Modi is seen at the Mazar of Bahadur Shah Zafar in Yangon. A tweet I put out, that's the point. Z has Narendra Modi surrounded. And I wrote on that piece in August, it's as if Xi Jinping is goading Narendra Modi, who would be seriously ill-advised, I said, to take on the Chinaman in that remote plateau, which sits at the tri-junction region of Bhutan, China and India. I think Narendra Modi, needs to be fully aware that the Chinese leader is advancing on all fronts. Myanmar plays the diplomatic card to avert UN censure over the Rohingya, said it was negotiating with China and Russia to ensure they block any UN Security Council censure of the violence. How depressing. Myanmar expresses confidence that China and Russia will protect them from UN Security Council action. I said if Myanmar was situated closer to the Middle East, we would have had regime change by now. With all the chatter about a potential King Salman abdication, the king agreed yesterday on a 2018 US visit. This is from Javier Blas. The loonie went bananas and last was trading at 122.32. That's all because Bank of Canada raised its benchmark rate to 1%. Let's move on to the currency markets. The euro dollar has popped higher ahead of Draghi's speech today, 119.70 last. Dollar index 92.22, Japanese yen 108.94, Swiss franc 0.9561. The pound is at 130.60, the Australian dollar 0.8013, India rupee 64.037, South Korean won 1132.66, the Rial 30990, Egyptian pound 17.64, the South African rand is firmed, last trading at 12.80. Dollar index, this is a chart I got from Barades this morning, it's 92.22, looks as if it's gone a bit lower, but it really is the brink of a precipice, and it's difficult to work out whether it's going to stable up from these levels, because it's very oversold, and I would have thought most of the risk around Trump, barring the actual impeachment, is now priced into the dollar. Euro dollar, however, that's been on a storming year, 119.70 last, and we got Mario up next today. Commodity markets, crude oil, this chart is from Giancarlo Torlizzi, and last trading in New York at $49.50. It's popped up of late. Societe Generale via Gianclaudio is saying that there's a multi-month trend line at 49.80, which will be a test of character. Let's see if that can hold. Gold last trading at 13.37. That's come up, obviously, correlated to the geopolitics. This is a chart of iron ore, which is, underpins a lot of the metals market. Then have a look at rare earth metals, which are apparently booming again. Foreigners' record holdings of EMEA debt raise risk of a tapered tantrum, says Bloomberg. Foreigners are holding a record amount of local currency debt from developing nations in Europe, the Middle East and Africa, putting markets there at risk of a sudden exodus if US and Euro area officials tighten monetary policy more than analysts expect. With no government help, Mumbai flood victims are on their own, really, when it's gone cuckoo all over. We told you that by killing 7, all the 7 millions will rise. Forevi, it's time to go. Togo wants freedom. This is what's been going on the Togo relate. And in that video, which is from Farida_N, you can see what people's power really is. Togo cabinet passed a draft bill on term limits amid these protests. Take a look at this. This is the northern city of Bafilo in Togo, inhabited by 25,000 people. Look at the crowd. Even the smallest town has joined the revolution. So big developments over there in West Africa. Angola's ruling MPLA wins election with 61% of the vote. Mission accomplished, Laurencio told supporters at his party's headquarters in Luanda. Interesting piece I came across, Continuity and Change in War and Conflict in Africa. Take a read. Congo opposition calls for coalition to force Kabila's exit. Joseph Kabila is the sole obstacle on the way to the organization of elections in our country. Felix Tshisekedi, I launch an appeal to all anti-Kabila parties to mobilize themselves together to obtain his departure. He's significantly better organized than all of them. Almost half, 45% of Cameroonians say belonging to a secret society helps people reach top positions in the public sector. South Africa's business confidence is at its lowest in over 30 years, as merchandise import and export volumes fell. Business groups in South Africa's economic performance was suboptimal despite a positive global outlook, and improved business confidence was needed to revitalize domestic growth. The sale of 90 million shares for $1.15 billion in a private placement reduces Vodafone's stake in Vodacom to 64.5%. South African all-share is up 9.53% so far this year. Dollar versus Rand, 12.80 last, and I think the Rand will continue to trade better. Egyptian pound, 17.64. Nigeria's Buhari said he would not seek a re-election in 2019. That's interesting. There was clearly no condition to. Nigerian all shares up 32.49% this year. The Ghana Stock Exchange is up 45.53% this year. Kenya's court confounds the coup-prone image of Africa. David Pilling, the Financial Times. Last week, a man wearing red, white and black robes sat at a bench in a small room in Nairobi and said a few words that reverberated around the continent. If Donald Trump and Kim Jong-un had not been playing a game of nuclear chicken, might have reverberated around the world. That man was David Maraga, the Chief Justice of Kenya, and the words he spoke annulled the result of the just concluded presidential election. The majority decision of the six-member court, there were two dissenting voices, sent a thunderous message about the sanctity of elections and judicial independence. That message should resonate from Washington to Pretoria and from Manila to the DR Congo, where institutions are struggling to rein in leaders gone rogue. There's been much to admire in Kenya. The bravery of Mr. Maraga was matched by the equanimity of ordinary Kenyans, who reacted to a decision with absolute calm. Kenya is the story of an institutional glass half full. If the Supreme Court dressed itself in glory, the Electoral Commission was covered in a less fragrant substance. Although voting itself was orderly and peaceful, the electronic transmission of results was a shambles. Many polling stations were unable to beam up data due to inadequate mobile phone coverage. It is immensely frustrating for the people of Africa who have shown overwhelming support for democracy, according to opinion polls, that it is so hard to count their votes. Much of this is deliberate. Incumbents install systems of people they can control and, if necessary, manipulate. The sanctity of elections depends every bit as much on those running electoral commissions as it does on those presiding over the courts. In Nigeria, it was the actions of Atahiru Jega, Electoral Commission Chair, who ensured the integrity of the 2015 election in which the incumbent Goodluck Jonathan lost. One of Africa's most credible recent elections came in the Gambia, where people voted with marbles, and the tally was carried out under public scrutiny. In those elections, voters booted out Yahya Jammeh, who had been in charge for 22 years. And on the 4th of September, I recommended the very same. I would recommend that we look at the marble solution a la Gambia, I said. And I also said Supreme Court's 4-2 decision to annul the election was an unprecedented move in Africa, and the first time on the continent that a court had ruled against an elected incumbent. Judges ordered a new vote to be held within 90 days, given the damning nature of the verdict with respect to the IEBC, which David was saying as well. It had failed, neglected, or refused to conduct the presidential election in a manner consistent with the dictates of the Constitution. It's unclear to me how that 60-day deadline is going to be met. And we also learned that the Kenyan electoral body says staff are refusing to resign despite this ruling. In a normal democracy, people would have introspected, they would have opted to step aside. This is the IEBC Commissioner, Rosalind Akombe, on Wednesday by phone. They've failed to do that, they've refused. It's a game of musical chairs the Commission is playing. St. Dismas Makua, the team managing the election, must be beyond reproach and acceptable to both parties. If not, we may end up with another election that will be nullified. NTV Newsroom published this. Have a look at your local and regional headlines. One headline was obviously about the IEBC, and I also like the second one. Election petitions are piling up, just as we expect. At least 17 governors are facing a major battle to retain their seats after their opponents filed petitions challenging their victories in the August 8th election, as you would expect. That's the internal dichotomy at the base of this decision. You theoretically should have rejected all, not just one. Nairobi all shares up 21.7% so far in 2017, and it dropped 5.2199% in the immediate aftermath of 2 sessions after the Supreme Court decision. Now has rebounded 1.21% over the subsequent 2 sessions. NSE 20 is up 18.85% in 2017, retreated 6.38% since the Supreme Court decision before yesterday's 0.45% turnaround. Is proposing to sell 100% of the issued capital of Mavuno to Omnia and Penna Heights after completion of transfer of non-cement business to Mavuno Armed Cement. Armed Cement reported disappointing first half results where revenue slumped 19.832% and the loss per share was 3 shillings and 30 cents from a previous 1 shilling and 10 cents. Once again, thank you kindly for stopping by, and I wish you a wonderful weekend.